morning guys, it's pretty cold in the studio today. If you're new to this channel, my name's Meg, I'm owner of Fizz and Flourish, an illustration business, and normally I do studio vlogs, but this week I've decided to do something a little bit different, and I asked on Instagram what it is you'd like to see, and you wanted to see how I make notebooks. So what I thought I'd do, because I've done so much trial and error on this, I feel like I've tried every single method I can think of to make these notebooks myself. So hopefully you can apply this to your business. If you want to get them outsourced and manufactured, that's great. This is just a brilliant way to start off in business without putting that upfront cost into manufacturing. If you're not sure if your books are going to sell, this is a really great way to test a product and see how well it does in your shop before spending money on a large quantity of stock. What I've found is these have been selling really well in my shop, and I'm now at a stage where I need to get my covers manufactured, but I'm going to show you how to do it yourself before you get to this stage if you want to test that out. I also have a large guillotine, which is a bit of an investment. If you don't want to do this, I'm going to show you another way you can cut the edge of the notebooks, because when you fold them over, they're going to stick out and look really messy. So let's get into the video. Okay, first things first, you want the actual design. A few things I have tips for when it comes to doing a repeat pattern. If you're using an iPad, for example, and you have your set design here, when you duplicate it or copy and paste it and move it about, you want to only duplicate the very first design you've done. If you duplicate this and make it into this one, and then duplicate this one and make it into this one, you're going to lose quality every single time you duplicate. If you use things like Photoshop, then that's not going to be a problem, but on Procreate, you don't want to duplicate your duplicate, if that makes sense. So this is an A4 canvas. If you use a small canvas and then scale it up, you're going to lose resolution and it's going to look really fuzzy. If you're working traditionally, what you can do is take a really nice photo of your work or scan your work and then print it off. I just prefer to use Procreate because that's where I do my design work. Okay, in terms of materials, this card is called Conqueror card, and it really didn't work for me. It's actually more expensive than the normal white card, but even though this is called bright white, highly white, it's not, it's cream. And when I spoke to the company, they said that this is as white as you can get it. I don't know if the video can pick it up, but it's actually quite a strong cream colour, and it totally ruined the colours of my print. So I wouldn't recommend Conqueror card. This is normal white card and it's pre-scored, so you don't have to worry about scoring the notebook yourself, although I am going to show you how to do that yourself, which will save you a cost because pre-scored card is more expensive. I do not recommend using 350 GSM. It won't work in your printer. It's just going to jam it up. In my printer anyway, I have the Epson EcoTank 750, and I was a little bit cocky because I could get my 300 GSM through no bother, and I thought, well, why not try? And yeah, it doesn't work, so don't use that one. As you can see from how much 300 GSM I have left, this was going great in my printer and it was feeding through fine. I liked the thickness of it and the quality of this card. I'll leave all the links below to the shops, and then all of a sudden it stopped working and my printer just jammed and it was a nightmare. So I spoke to Epson and they said that it'll work for a bit and then it'll just stop. So if you're gonna start as you mean to go on, I would go for a slightly thinner card, and to be honest, this is perfect. 250 GSM is plenty thick enough for a notebook cover. When you've got all the paper inside and the cover on, it's still thick enough to do the job, especially if you're going to laminate them, as I'm going to show you. So I'll show you the settings I use on my printer and show you the outcome. So this is the printer I use. It's the Epson EcoTank 7750. It's the same as the 7700, except this one can take A3 paper. So I'm about to load the card in, and when you're printing the cover, you want the groove to be dipping down. So when you fold it, the bump edge is on the inside. It took me a little while to figure that out, so make sure you put it in the right way. And just for this printer in particular, I set it to a matte setting, and trust me, I've tried all the settings, so this one for this particular printer works best. Okay, so once you've got your design in Photoshop, you want to go to print, so file and print, And in terms of settings, so this is a bit of a tricky one. Something that I've found is if I was to print A4 borderless, obviously the borders go to the edge and it will print with no white margins. The problem I found with this is that it wastes a lot of ink, and you might think that, oh, it's only a tiny little margin, but what happens with the inkjet printer is as soon as it prints over the edge to reach the edge of the page, it deposits the wasted ink into your maintenance box and fills up the maintenance box full of ink really quickly, and that can get expensive to keep replacing. So what I started doing is just printing them with a normal margin and trimming that away afterwards. So the book will be just shy of A4. So I'm just going to check the actual settings. So I'll go print settings. And I want to do it from the rear paper feed because that's where you put the heavier cardstock. And I'm going to set it to Epson matte. And I'm going to make sure I unselect borderless. So I'm going to save and I'm going to print. Okay, so if you don't have pre-scored card, I really recommend this. It's a product by Eck Tools. There are other brands out there, but this one has been great for me. And it comes with a little scorer, and it's a really great way to get a professional score line on your paper. Okay, so now that you've got the cover, you just need the inside pages. One thing I love about manufacturing these notebooks myself is that I can add details like this, and I think it makes the book really unique. Obviously, I print them double-sided, and I just use my new laser printer for this. It makes it a lot quicker than using the inkjet. And obviously, you can just print lined paper, squared paper, dotted paper, whatever you want, or you could just buy lined paper and use that. So this next stage you don't have to do, but I found that the extra 5 minutes it takes to press each page is so worth it. When you fold the pages all at once together like this, you don't get the crisp edge down the middle that you would if you folded them individually. And it just means that when the notebook's finished, it tends to kind of spring open more. And I tried using a book press and it just wasn't the same as folding each page in half. I use my little scorer to do this and it doesn't take that long. There's only 12 pages. So it's well worth this extra step, I think. So once you've done that and you fold the notebook in half, you'll notice that the edges stick out. But don't worry, we're going to sort this out later on in the video. So this is the lamination paper I use. It protects the cover from scratches and watermarks and stuff like that. So you'll need a laminator, mine's just a pretty cheap one, and something to cut the lamination paper with. Again, this is a pretty cheap guillotine, and the stand that I'm using the lamination paper for is just from IKEA. So I cut it a little bit bigger than the page, so it's just bigger than A4. I've also found that you need to laminate both sides. If you just do one side, it curls and it just looks awful. And because I'm using matte lamination paper, you can still write your name on the inside. I don't know if you can do that with gloss lamination paper. I've also found that when I'm laminating, I laminate it twice. So what I do is I laminate the cover first and then the inside cover, and as you can see, I fold the cover as I'm pulling it out of the laminator. This is really important to do it while it's warm, and press the edge while it's warm. If you do it once it's cooled down, it just doesn't take this shape very well and the notebook won't sit flat like this. That is a very big tip I've learned. The next thing I do is just trim away the lamination paper that's excess. I don't trim away the white margins. If you don't have a guillotine, another thing you can do is use a ruler and scalpel. So you just line up the ruler and use the scalpel to cut away any excess lamination paper. Okay, so next you need some sort of foam or styrofoam or something like that for putting the staples in. Now, I don't use a long stapler, I like to hand hammer them in. I think it's just a much more accurate way of doing it. You know exactly where the staples are going to go. So you need to get these center lines exactly in the middle. This takes a bit of practice and you might go through a few notebooks before you get this right. If you're finding this tricky, you can skip the stage where you fold individual pages, and that way it won't be noticeable if you go slightly off center. To clamp them in place, I just use a bulldog clip and protect the notebook with a little bit of foam. So you can see here, I'm making sure it's exactly central. You want the spine of the notebook to match exactly the middle pages. So I've used a couple of types of staples, but basically you want to get the capacity for the amount of paper you're using, and you'll need a little needle and something to hammer it in. Now I'm using an old notebook I made just to mark where the staples are going to go, but you can make your own template and just make sure that they're marked evenly on the page. To make sure the holes I mark fit, I just pop a stapler next to it and mark with a pin. I then hammer the needle in a little bit, and I just double check the other side to make sure it's smack bam in the middle. If it's not right in the middle, it's not going to fold very well. I then go ahead and hammer in the rest of my nails with my very professional hammer ruler and pop the staples in. Flip the book over and press the staples down with either a ruler or the back of your scorer. Next, we're going to sort out the overlapping edges. So I have this really great industrial paper cutter, but if you haven't already noticed my disgusting thumbnail, it is very, very sharp. And I caught my thumb on this blade, so please, please, please be careful. Just one thing to point out before you rush out and buy this: although it looks very straight and you've got this bit of plastic to line up your paper, it does not cut straight. You have to line it up by eye, and that can be quite tricky. So I started adding a bit of card because it was leaving oil marks and leaving a line where the clamp pressed onto the notebook. So at the arrows you can see an indent mark on the red block where the blade has cut before, and I make sure it's lined up with this. You then want to press down the clamp tightly so that the notebook doesn't move or rip any edges. Undo the safety lock and press down. As you can see, it cuts a really nice, neat edge, and once you've practiced lining it up, it's a really, really quick and efficient way to cut the edges of your notebooks. But if you don't have this big guillotine, I'll show you how I started before I invested in this cutting machine. Okay, so this ruler came all the way from Germany. It's quite expensive, I think it was about £25, but I promise you it's so worth it. This grip on the bottom is brilliant and it doesn't move at all. It's nice and thick. This cheap one really hurts your hand, it moves about. Yeah, I absolutely love it. When it comes to the scalpel, you can see this is all blunt, and this is so important to always change it for a nice new blade. If you use a blunt one, it's just going to pull the paper and ruin your notebook, and once you've cut, you've cut. Now for this stage, it's really important not to press down really, really hard on the paper. You want to do light to medium pressured strokes, keeping the ruler in place and just cutting a few pages at a time. You can see it creates just as straight a line as the guillotine, but it takes a lot of practice. I promise you, I went through quite a few notebooks to get to this stage where I felt confident cutting this with a ruler and scalpel. I'm just going to show you again with a close-up of me cutting a few pages at a time. You just want to take it nice and slow and just not put too much pressure on the pen. It will just pull the paper and it won't look as neat. If you've still got some rough edges, what you can do is use a nail file just to sand away bits of paper, but I would try and avoid this and just try and practice on some scrap paper before you do it on your real notebooks. Okay, this next stage is a totally optional extra. I don't always have time to do this with the amount of notebooks that I need to make, but my partner made me a book press out of 2 chopping boards, a washer, a large screw, a bolt, a wing nut, and you can find the tutorial video I used linked below. So you can put a few notebooks in at a time and just put even pressure on and tighten the wing nuts. For the best results, I'd leave the notebooks in overnight, but as I said, there's not always time to do that. So the notebook on the left is the one I laminated in this video, and the cover on the right has been manufactured. You can notice a real difference in the colours, but the manufactured one is actually closer in colours to my original design. I should point out as well, the inside pages I use are made from 100% recycled materials, and I'm going to leave all the links to all the materials I use below, as well as all the equipment I use, and I really hope this tutorial has been useful to you. If it has, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and hit subscribe, because I plan on doing a lot more tutorials like this. And if there's anything I've missed or questions you have, just comment below. I really try to answer everyone's comments. I don't always have time, but I will try my best to answer your questions. You can also buy my notebooks from my shop, which I'll link below, and I plan on adding some more designs very soon, so watch out for that. Right, I'm going to end this tutorial and I'm going to get filming for next week's studio vlog. Okay, bye.